Okay, we're going to start in a minute. I'm going to... The strangest thing, man. Okay, here we go. He was in front of my face the whole time. Okay. Okay, let's start. Everybody who's ever there, okay, welcome. Those people who are online, okay, and those people who are on Zoom, welcome, welcome, welcome. Here, I got people who are waiting. Admit, admit, admit. Okay, fine. Here we go. All right. We're in. Hello.
Rabbi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I couldn't do what we talked about because that room you haven't admitted anyone, so everyone's just waiting.
Oh, Gewalt. How do I do that? How do we?
I don't know. The only way I just
go to the other room then. Go to the other one, okay?
Go to the wrong one?
Well, I guess it's the right one if everybody's there, right? Do you know the numbers of that meeting? Do you know the last numbers?
Is anyone on here besides me?
No, Anthony's also here.
I am.
Yeah, but Tony's only there because I gave him the content, the info. So if you want, we can all go to the other one, and Tony will leave and go back where you were, right, Tony? Nobody was there?
Well, I was on this same one. It just, I hadn't been invited into it because the most recent email, I clicked on that link and it opened this.
That was the one I was supposed to. That's why I sent it. That's why I send a link every single time.
I sent the link this morning. Were you on the link from Friday?
No, this is the one from this morning that I'm on.
Yeah.
Oh, how weird.
I didn't send a link on Friday.
Oh, it was just the content.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, it is the same number. It is the same number.
Yeah. I just don't understand how anybody got confused. But I saw that Anne was confused. Okay? This is what I'm going to do.
Well,
this is what I'm going to do.
Put it it's in the Zoom chat now. I mean, in the Facebook chat now, so people will see it.
Okay, fine. I'm going to send it again. Okay, the login. Just 1 second here.
Sorry, I misspelled your name, Tony.
That's okay.
Okay. What is the Zoom number?
999.
Good. Wait a minute. Tell it to me again. 999.
999.
Yeah.
080.
Yes.
726.
726.
72684.
4. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm just sending it out to everybody. Don't know why that happened, but you know, I don't know. I haven't figured it out. What can I do? I'm technologically challenged. I'm allowed.
With Zoom, I think we all are.
I'm allowed. I'm allowed to be technologically challenged. Okay. Just 1 second. Give me 1 more minute just to send to the group. I sent them this link. I'll send it again. Okay, let's go back. Now, okay, okay, here we go. Okay, let's start. And those who will join in, hopefully they'll join in very soon. Okay. All right. All right, here we go. All right, we're ready to start. Sorry about the delay. There's people there watching also on Facebook. Welcome, everybody. Okay, let's start this class. We're in the process. We are all investigating the unbelievable concept of elevating our levels of consciousness, going from what we call opening of the eyes to reaching the full love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we spoke about it, that the Sulam spoke about it, that there's 4 levels, right? As we always got to go over again, the 4 levels of consciousness that we're investigating are 2 happens to do with 2 levels of God's concealment. And then there is also, so there's 4 levels of consciousness. So the 2, which is our levels of concealment, we say Hester Echad, 1 level, level 1 concealment. And then there's level 2, which we call single concealment, okay? And then we'll have the 2 levels where a person comes to his level of consciousness, which is called Gilui Panim. And there's 2 levels of Gilui Panim. When we speak about a Gilui Panim, when we speak about God's revealing himself, so we're speaking about level 1, where a person comes to the revelation, he understands God in terms of divine providence, that every single thing comes to a person in exact measurement, according to his belief, according to his actions. Everything just has got to come right back to Hashem, and right back to him, the person. The person understands totally that if he does good, it's unbelievable pleasure. And if he does bad, in terms of the Torah's prescription, then it means like drinking a cup of gasoline. Eating something not kosher would be like eating gasoline, and doing a mitzvah would be like receiving the ultimate pleasure. That's level consciousness 1. But then again, that's only called, we call that Chuhwa from fear. Okay? Chuhwa from fear means basically from awe of God, which means you understand God's providence in the world, but still you haven't come to the highest level of consciousness, which is called Chuhwa from love. Chuhwa from love, as we know, is where even a person's past misdeeds, even though those times in his life where things were dark, and he did actions based upon his level of consciousness, those actions become elevated when he does tshuva, when he returns, when he comes close to God out of love. All of those actions in the past become elevated. They become diamonds, okay? And we used the parable last week. I wanted to know what you guys thought about that parable, that imagery, about the person, the Jewish guy who was working for this certain master who loved him. And there was another guy who was the butler, we'll call him the butler. He also, worked for the baron or the duke or whatever. And the master had to go away one time, and this guy who really was an anti-Semite and couldn't stand that Jew took him out to the town square and beat him 20 times or 5 times or whatever. And what happened was, when the master came back, he found out what had happened, that this guy beat this guy in the public square, right, 5 times. And he says, for each time you have to give him 1,000 gold coins for each time that you hit him. So what was the idea of that? Remember, the idea was the guy comes back, the Jewish man comes back, and his wife finds him sad, and he says, what are you sad about? You just got 5,000 gold coins, but because what does he say? Halavai. If you'd only hit me 10 times, how much more rich I would be. Now, you have to let that idea, concept sink in very much, because we go through a lot of suffering, and it's tremendous, the suffering that we go through. The entire world goes through. But if we could put ourselves, even for a second, in the place where, in the end, we're going to see something good come out of each one of those times. Something unbelievable is going to come out from that. And that there's going to be something in your consciousness, right? Where it's going to say, you can imagine after your souls are finally in that state, can you imagine you're saying, I got that for that? If it was only double. Can you imagine yourself saying that? Okay? If it was only, I could have endured more, right? Can you imagine being in such a state? In other words, we are in our level of limited consciousness right now, right? We don't see, we suffer. But if you can imagine, and then one day, and it will happen, where we're going to say, oh, I got that for that? Wow. If it was only more. As crazy as it sounds. Okay? But that is what we call the level of consciousness where we see how God turned all of our past misdeeds into sources of pleasure. Okay? All of that suffering, those hardships, will be sources of pleasure to the point where we will say, if it was only more, I could have endured more. Hard for us to say now, but there will be a time, okay? And this is what we call going up in that level of consciousness. But we haven't quite reached level 4. We're all reaching in terms of the states of love. We need to get to level 4, right? We need to get to the second level of love. Don't forget, there's Hester Panim, right? And then there's, in that Hester Panim and Gilui Panim, in that God hiding his face and God revealing his face, there are 4 levels of love that we have been exploring. 2 which are 4. The 2 levels, right? Which each one has 2 in it, right? The one level of love was a conditional love. and the other love, which is an unconditional love. Now, there's two types of conditional love. There's two types of unconditional love. And what are the types? The types of conditional love. One is where, okay, you're receiving a lot of good. That's obviously conditional. You're receiving good, okay? But, and there's still a lot of hardships that the person did to you in the past. But because of what you're receiving now, okay, it's you choose to, what we call the big word, deny it, okay? And then what there is in the second level, which is also a conditional level of love, it is where you're receiving the pleasure and it's as if there was never anything bad at all. Okay? And that's what we talked about now, where it's as if there was no bad at all. So that means all of your deeds in the past, you see, have been elevated to the point where they become merits. Okay? So then that instantly will propel you to a higher level of love, called the unconditional love. The unconditional love we spoke with is not what most of the world understands to be unconditional. That means no matter what you do to me, I will still love you. Okay? That is not unconditional love the way that the Sulam terms it is. That you see the qualities of the person or the other. When you see their qualities, just who they are, how they behave, right? You're with them in a restaurant and you see how they're amazing, how their interactions is with everybody. And wow, I love that person because of their character. Not because of what they give me, but what their character. So that's level 1 of the unconditional love of God. And then but you don't know how they are with everybody in the world, okay? But if you were to come to know the person's character, with how they are with everybody in the entire world, that their character is impeccable, flawless, beneficial, loving, then that comes to level 4 of the love, or we'll call it level 2 of the unconditional love. So today we're going to explore how to get to level 4. Okay, we've talked about how we first have to get into the Torah. We have to explore the Torah in order to get to what's called an opening of the eyes. God, open my eyes and see the wonders of your Torah. Okay? That's called Pekichat Einayim b'Torah, b'niflaot HaTorah. We want to see the wonders of God's Torah. And that opens up our eyes to give us the first level of awareness that God is totally involved in my life. And then, of course, that reaches us to propels us to the higher levels of consciousness. Okay? So now we're going to explore how to get to the highest. And I don't know if we'll get to it today, but we're going to start. So we're going to start on page 169, if you have in your sheets that I handed out. Yes, we are in the same book called In the Shadow of the Ladder, or the Sulam, the introductions of the Sulam, what we call the Sefer Hakdamot. This is a Talmud, the introduction of the Talmud Eser Sfirot. So we're on paragraph 110, okay? Kuf Yud Aleph. No, Kuf Yud. So we've explained up till now. We have only explained how a person comes to the first 2 levels of conditional love. But we have yet to investigate how a person can come to relate to the Creator according to the 2 levels of unconditional love in order to reach... Okay, so this is what he wants to bring us. We did explore in conditional love of how you get there, okay? And that is, we saw that from the Gemara that he brings down in the Talmud, in the Gemara Brachot, that the rabbis, when they were parting from Rabbi Abba, they said, may you see your world in your lifetime. And that operates basically on the principle of Kol ha'omed legabot kabui dami. Anybody who stands to collect is as if they collected, which is basically the person has to put themselves in a level of perception, project themselves as if they are already there, as if they're already in the next world, and they see the great benefits of the great love that God is going to bestow upon them. They see it in their lifetime. See your world in your lifetime. In other words, you're going to get a big check at the end of this life, okay? and you're happy, you have that energy as if you've already collected it already, okay? That's what gets you at least to conditional love, okay? So in order to clarify, now he's going to give us now, of course, the way that all of these masters do. They're going to give us a statement from the Talmud, and then he's going to explore this statement, and within this statement, he's going to explain those higher levels of love called unconditional love and how we get there. So here he says, the Tana said, okay, this is from a Gemara in Kedushin, Daf Mem, 40, page 40. The Tana said, a man should always consider himself as if he is half liable and half meritorious. Chetzi zakai and chetzi chayav. Okay? We're going to understand that simply is, look at yourself as if you're Ramish right on the balance. Exactly. Like, in other words, you have certain sins, and you have good deeds too, but you have to look at it as if it's exactly like that. We're just going to use that construct for now for this. So he says, if he does one mitzvah, he should be happy that he tilted the balance to the side of merit. If he does one sin, woe to him. He has tilted the balance to the side of liability. As Scripture says, one sinner can destroy much good. Chote echad, right? Chote echad avad tuva harbe, right? One sinner can destroy much good. That's the Mishle from Proverbs, okay? How can it be one sinner destroys much good? So his understanding is a person has to look himself as if every single moment of your life, you're 50-50, and you have to understand if you do one more mitzvah, you can be balancing the scales. It's kind of like you have to put yourself into this psych mode, okay? Where this is how you're looking at life. And this is how you're looking at yourself. Okay, but Rabbi Eliezer now takes it a step further. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Don't forget Rabbi Elazar. It says Rabbi Eliezer, but it's really Rabbi Elazar. He was the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He was in the cave with his father for 13 years. The world is judged according to the majority of its deeds. And the individual is judged according to the majority of his deeds. In other words, now he's going a little bit more global with the world. Again, the world is judged according to the majority of its deeds, and an individual, the individual is judged according to the majority of his deeds. If he does one mitzvah, then happy is he who tilted himself and the whole world to the side of merit. And if he does one sin, then what happens? Woe to him who tilted the balance of himself and the whole world to the side of liability. As it is said, Chote echad ya'abed tuba harbe, one sinner can destroy much good. Because of the one sin that the person did, much good is lost to him and the whole world. Okay? This is a very interesting piece of Chazal. We call it Chazal, which means Chachamenu Zichronam Libracha, our wise men of blessed memory. This is handed down in the Talmud. And it has a lot of questions to it, a lot of difficulties. So, because you really cannot understand it simply. There's a lot of questions that come out of this. What I have to see myself as if he's going to ask the questions right now. So here he starts with paragraph 111, paragraph 111. Rabbi Eliezer's words seem to be riddled with difficulties from beginning to end. Because he says, if you look at Rabbi Eliezer's words, he says that someone who does one mitzvah immediately tilts his or her balance to the side of merit, because if a person is judged according to the majority of his or her deeds. But surely this would only apply to an individual of whom it could be said, who's half, okay? Half good deeds, half bad deeds. But Rabbi Eliezer doesn't say that, okay? We call it Iker Chaser Min HaSefer. The essence is missing from the text. All Rabbi Eliezer says is that what? The world is judged according to the majority. A person is judged according to the majority. If you do one thing, you can tip the scales, okay? He doesn't look at he's not saying that you should see yourself right here, poised, half-half, okay? It's almost like Rosh Hashanah, okay? He doesn't say that, right? But Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, is not, in fact, talking about such a situation. The most important part of his words, in fact, is missing from our text. But the commentator Rashi, he does explain the meaning. Rabbi Elazar is referring to the statement of the Tana that a person should always consider himself or herself as being half liable, half meritorious. But he adds that a person should also look at the whole world as if the world itself is half liable and half meritorious. And if this is what he meant, why didn't he say that language? In other words, he doesn't say that. He didn't say those words. He's going to explain this more. But basically the idea is, what is Rabbi Elazar talking about? Okay? Is he talking about somebody who is half-half? It doesn't seem to indicate that. What is he talking about? Who is he referring to? Okay? But here, go to paragraph 112. But the most difficult matter we need to consider is how can a person consider himself or herself as if he or she is only half liable? How can you do that? Okay? Because you really don't know. We really don't know, right? We're going through life. We wish. I mean, it would be nice. Listen, this is a nice construct. There's nice ideas. You know, the idea here that's really hitting us smack in the head is, wow, if you look at yourself and you look at the entire world as if like this, and you can do one meritorious act, you are saving the world. Okay? Huge concept here. Okay? If you would have that idea, that feeling, that knowing in yourself, yes, and it is true, okay? Because you tip one mitzvah, you are saving the world, okay? But we have to get into the language here and exactly who is it referring to and how do we understand love of God. So, obviously, here, we can't say that it's telling you to look at it like that. Why? Because what? If one knows for oneself that one has many sins, okay? And I know the rabbis say, oh my gosh, my sins are just so unbelievably many, right? And how does that look upon us, right? How are we supposed to feel about ourselves when they say that, right? There was once a story, the Noam Elimelech, they asked him, you know, after Yom Kippur, and we bang our chest, we say Al Chait, and we come to God with sincerity, and we want to be forgiven, and we believe that we're forgiven, and then we believe that Yom Kippur eradicates all our sins. How come right after the Shemona Esrei, it's a classic question, they all ask it, how come right after Yom Kippur, we're praying the evening service, and in the evening service it says, forgive us because we sinned. We just been 2 seconds. It's about 3 seconds, maybe 4. Okay, since Yom Kippur ended to now, so the Noam Elimelech says, you're not going to like this, but too bad. Okay, the Noam Elimelech went sat there once, I guess, after davening or something like that, and he calculated, and then he told the students, I calculated, I did 400 sins in between that time. 3 seconds! Okay, how do you figure? Okay, on his level, his thoughts, where he was going, what he was doing, okay, that's on his level. Okay, the rabbis do that, by the way. Okay, us, where do we stand in this? Okay, so here he's going, if one knows for oneself that one has many sins, should he or she lie to himself or herself and say that they are only half and half? You can't do that. The Torah says that midavar sheker tirchak. From a thing of an element of a lie, you must distance yourself completely. Keep your distance from a lie. We're not allowed to lie. Every single thing that those sages are saying is not just to try to build you up and placate and make you feel good. They're not interested in that. Every single thing is emes, okay? So, and they're not telling you to lie. So that's the biggest problem, okay? Furthermore, if we take literally the statement that one who commits a sin can lose much good, then this would imply that because of that one sin, the person tilts the balance for himself or herself together with the world on the side of liability. But we are not here to discuss some hypothetical situation that a man or woman might imagine. We are talking of reality as it is for ourselves and for the world. So it's very hard to say, because the Marsha also asked the question. There's a commentary in the Gemara there that says, he says, well, what happens if you have a guy who's like full of sins, yet he does a mitzvah, then he should be tilting the world to good, but that doesn't kind of make sense. Okay, we'll get into that answer later. Rabbi Eleazar's words are even more puzzling when we consider the fact that in every generation there are many people who do at least one mitzvah, yet the world is still not tilted to the side of merit. It seems that the situation does not change at all, but the world just carries on the same old way. In other words, if you tip the scale to the side of merit, we should see a change in the world, right? We should see more of God's revelation. The floodgates should be open. Knowledge should be prevalent. Raised levels in consciousness should happen. So we see that we need to understand this text at a much deeper level. According to the superficial reading, we can't make any sense of it if you look at it simply. It can't be you're being told to lie to yourself and look at it as if you're half-half. Okay? So the text is not talking about a man or a woman who knows for himself or herself that their sins are many. It's not talking about that person. Okay? It is not trying to persuade the person to believe something false about themselves, namely, that he or she is half sinful and half meritorious, and thus to entice the person and persuade them that all they lack is one mitzvah. That is not the way of the sages at all. Like I say, everything the sages do is to direct you to the truth and to live according to the principles of truth. So what are they getting at? What are they talking about? Okay? Rather, the Talmud is talking here about a person who feels or considers himself or herself to be a complete tzaddik. Okay? So in other words, a person, they're basically good, they're doing the best they can, all of their actions with mindfulness, directing themselves, and they feel they're pretty good. Maybe even they feel that they're a complete tzaddik. The person feels that he or she has achieved complete perfection. And this is because they have already become worthy of the first level of love through the opening of the eyes in the Holy Torah, through which we have learned when a person reaches that level of consciousness and their eyes are opened in the Torah, we say God will testify about that person, that he or she will never return to their old ways. It is to such a person that the Tana is speaking, this kind of person who has reached level consciousness number 2 or 3. Clarifying his or her path and proving to him or her that they are still not complete. You're not yet a complete tzaddik because why? You're still what's considered a Benoni. Why? Because he or she is still not a complete tzaddik because there is one mitzvah from the 613 mitzvot, namely the mitzvah of loving God, that is lacking. Okay? Don't forget, it's like the way that it seems to be the Sulam is pushing us. It's like we're trying to reach this mountain peak. The diamond is on the mountain peak. That's the mitzvah of love of God. And it seems like you're climbing and you're climbing. If you haven't reached the top, you didn't get there. You're still considered a Benoni no matter how high you got. Okay? Until you've reached absolute, unconditional, eternal love of God, the way he's saying, it's golnish, as we say in Yiddish, okay? Golnish. You never heard that word before? Golnish, okay? So, which means squat in Texas talk, okay? Diddly squat in California. The testimony of God that a person will no longer sin is only based on the clarity of his or her perception of the great loss that would be experienced if the person were to commit a sin. In other words, if a person's mental focus and perception is if they were to do a sin, it would be like drinking a cup of gasoline. They would never do such a thing. Like in their right mind, they'd never drink gasoline. They'd never do this sin. They're on that level of consciousness. Of course, they won't do that sin anymore. But this kind of drawing close to God, we call it Chuhwa, This is called the fear of sin, yirat ha'onish, fear of repercussions, fear of consequences. For this reason, the state of consciousness of the person at this time is called a transformation through fear of sin, as we have explained above. That's not the zenith of the mountain that we're trying to head to, okay? It is a level, it is an unbelievable level of consciousness, okay? And we are working towards getting it, but we're still in the process. We have also discussed above that the stage of transformation through fear of sin only heals a person from the time of his or her transformation onwards, but not retroactively. It doesn't take care of the sins of the past. It's completely. All the pain and suffering that was undergone before meriting the revelation of God's face, that Gilui Panim, have stayed exactly as they were without any healing at all. Also, the sins that a person committed then are not completely transformed, but they remain in their status of sins were committed inadvertently, accidental sins. Don't forget, when you do Chuhwa, when you return to God out of fear, out of awe, all of those deeds of the past that were even done on purpose become transformed into deeds which is considered to be done on accident. That is not the complete healing or rectification for those deeds. God does not think small. He says, great way to go, buddy boy, but there's more to climb. I once had a just unbelievable dream many years ago. One of my teachers, Steve Miller, he was in the dream because he was teaching me at the time. And I was going up a mountain, and he was telling me, and I go up this one level of the mountain, and I see, oh my gosh, after I got up there, there's a whole nother level. And then you go up that, and then there's a whole nother level. Right? And he kept telling me, well, how high do you want to climb? Right? He was always there going, how high do you want to go? Right? So the idea here is you have to keep climbing. Even though you've reached this level of consciousness, you haven't gotten there yet. It is for this reason, the Tana, that's the first statement. Don't forget, there were two authors. There were two statements made. The first statement of our sages was a person has to see himself as if you're half and half. If you do one mitzvah, you weigh it all out for good. One avera, the whole thing crumbles. Okay? And that's the Tana. The Tana is telling such a person who's still lacking that one mitzvah that he or she should see himself as if they are half liable and half meritorious. That is to say, they should consider the moment when they merited transformation as the halfway point in their life. I'm going to explain this, okay? In this way, the liable half corresponds to the half of the person's life that he or she lived before the transformation. The half is certainly liable, as transformation from fear of sin does not heal it completely. Yet, he or she may also be considered as half meritorious, inasmuch as the second half of their life, which transpires from the time of the transformation onwards, is certainly meritorious, since the person is sure never to sin again. Therefore, the first half of one's life, one is liable, and for the second half, one is meritorious. Okay, so now he changes the complete way we're understanding that original statement. Let's go back. The Tana, this teacher, this master said, a person has to see himself as if he's half-half. Now, we, of course, learned in the beginning the construct was, okay, here I am in my time-space zone, and I'm going to look at the deeds that I have and the good, bad deeds and good deeds, and I'm going to look at half and half. And he's saying, no, that is not how we can look at it. And the problem was, you can't fool yourself. You have to be honest. It's talking about the individual who has reached this level of his eyes are open to the Torah, and a sin would be like drinking gasoline, and a mitzvah would be like running after the highest pleasure. The idea of half meritorious and half, what we call it, liable, is talking about the time of the person's life, not his situation in terms of how we look at his collection of his deeds in the spiritual realm. Yes, it is the collection of his deeds in the spiritual realm, but it relates to the time in the person's life. In other words, when he crosses a certain threshold and he reaches a level of consciousness where his eyes are opened and he's no longer going to do X, Y, or Z sin, and God testifies he ain't going to do that. So therefore, we look at from here on in his life, no matter where you are in life, is going to be called meritorious. And the past deeds, obviously everything shifts, but it doesn't shift completely. Because all of those deeds you did while you were walking in darkness, all of those deeds have still not become fully rectified to reach their full potential. In other words, you didn't see the gold in those deeds, okay? So the idea of half-half has to do with a person's time, his past versus his future, okay? It's a very big dynamic that he's shifting. When you see half-half, it has to do with your past misdeeds as opposed to going forward that are going to be meritorious. Oh, did I go off? Where am I? One second, please. Hold on, people. For some reason, all my Zoom class just got disrupted. Oh, my. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on, everybody. We're in the middle of this here. Hang on. Did I lose everybody? I lost everybody, didn't I? Yeah, I'm back. I'm back. I got bad internet. What can I say? I think they're trying to move me to the 5Gs, okay? This is part of their diabolical plot to move me to the 5Gs, okay? They want to say, well, your internet ain't working because you need 5G, okay? That's what they're going to do, okay? So anyway, let's go back, okay? All right. So here we're on this unbelievable transformation. Half liable means deeds of the past not yet fixed. So now we're on page 173, the top. The Tana says to such a person that he or she should think for themselves that if they were to practice one mitzvah, which is the only one that they lack out of the 613 mitzvot, namely that of loving God, then happy is he that he has tilted his balance to the side of merit. Okay? Very huge thing to focus on. Okay? Especially these days, the highest thing you need to focus on is love. Love of God. When we say the Shema, we go Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right? And we say Baruch Shem, we have to instantly think, you have to let it focus in. You can't get caught in doing things by rote. V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, and you have to dig deep into that feeling tone. Okay, you have to go, I am so in love with God, even though you might not be. You have to fake it till you make it. Okay, you have to put yourself as if you see that you're in the next world. You're in the reality of all there is. You have to project yourself and understand the real reality is God is all there is. And you have to understand the prime directive is love. Okay? Prime directive, all those Star Trek fans out there. It's a good one. Okay? I like the word prime directive. Okay? Okay? Because it gives you kind of a different sense of focus. Okay? Number one rule, love. And when you have love of God, that means all the people in your life, all the people around you, and all the entire world, there's one prime directive is to love. And you have to focus on that love. And that love should bleed into your entire day. In all of your meetings and dealings and altercations with every single person should only have in your heart the deepest sense of love. Every single morning. When I say in the davening, before I pray, we have to say according to the Arizal, Hareini mikabel alai mitzvahs aseh shel ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. I now accept upon myself to love every Jew like myself, to love every person. I now accept. You have to let your heart beat. You have to embellish a feeling. You have to hang out with that feeling just for a couple of seconds of how this is really where to go now. Because there's forces that don't want you to do it. There's forces of divisiveness that are trying to drive a wedge between every single thing and make things separate, okay? We have to understand the end of days where the serpent is getting the strongest. He's biting the heel. It says, like in Genesis, that in Genesis it says, right, you're going to smash his head. It turns about when Adam, in terms of dealing with the Nachash, okay? You're going to smash his head, and he's going to bite your heel. That's a big, huge conceptual metaphor here. It's not necessarily a physical thing about that you have to smash a snake in your garden. You have to smash his head. No. The head and the heel represents the history of humanity, okay? The head of the generations versus the heel of the generations. We look at the coming of the Mashiach, of the Messiah, as being the heel, the footsteps. We call it ikve, the heel of the Messiah. That's the generation that we're in right now. And it says there in Genesis, he will bite you in the heel. He's got to make his ultimate push for his existence, and it's going to be right there, okay? So, but the ultimate way, the ultimate protection, and the ultimate power that we have is in the power of love, okay? And they don't want you to do that, okay? So anyways, happy is he that tilted his balance to the side of merit. So when we focus on the Shema and we focus on that love, you have to look at it as if you've just done it, okay? Save the world, okay? As we're going to see. For whoever is worthy of the mitzvah of loving God, which is transformation from the love of God, merits that their arrogant acts are transformed into virtues. Okay? Then all the sorrow, awe, and sadness that they suffered in their lives before this transformation are transmuted into wonderful, limitless pleasure to such a degree that they are sorry that they did not suffer a great deal more. As in the above story about the Jewish servant and his master that we talked about at the beginning of today and last week's class. Okay? Yes, you will be sorry. Okay? You will say, dang it, if he was just, right? I only lost 20,000. If I only didn't lose 40,000, and it hurt me so much more in my 501 whatever, my 401k. Okay? This is called tilting the balance to the side of merit. A person's feelings together with his other mistakes and acts of arrogance have become now transformed into virtues. This is indeed tilting the balance to the side of merit, as the pan of the scales that was filled with liability, all of those sins, have now been transformed and become filled instead with virtuous acts. In the language of the sages, this transformation is called tilting the balance. In other words, when you get yourself into the level of consciousness in terms of your perception of love of God, to the point where all of your suffering, right, are going to be at a level where in the end of days, and you can project your mind there, okay? The Baal Shem Tov brings this unbelievable idea. I can't say it enough, which is, wherever your thoughts are, that is where you are. So if your mind, and you can put your mind into the realm of reality, which God, of course he wants, all of the idea of God hiding himself in your life was for you to come to a knowledge that God loves you and he wants you to find him. And he wants you to seek and you make effort to connect to him. And of course, God wants all of those mistakes that you made in your past. There's nothing God cannot do. He's infinite. He's Ein Sof. Of course, he's going to elevate all of them to the balance of merit. Of course, there's nothing he can't do. Even that act, even that I did, even when I was angry that time and did this and this and this, right? Even those, there's nothing God can't do. He can elevate every single thing. So the idea here is tilting the balance is this one mitzvah tilts the entire thing. But, okay, we're going to get to it. The Tana warns such a person, though. Going on in paragraph 117. The Tana warns such a person that as long as he or she is still a Benoni, that means in the middle, your training is not complete, and has not yet merited to that one remaining mitzvah that he or she lacks out of all of the 613 mitzvot, that they should not rely upon themselves. That you cannot, it says in a Tana, do not rely upon yourself to the day of your death. It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting statement. Because why? They should not even rely on the testimony of God that they will not return to their old ways, as they still might come to sin. A person can still make a mistake. Therefore, they should think for themselves that if they should do one sin, woe to them, that they have tilted their balance to the pan of liability. Such a person would immediately lose the wonderful insight in Torah and the revelation of God's face that they had experienced, and they're thrust back into darkness. Their consciousness would fall once more into the concealment of God's face, and then they would have tilted themselves to the negative side. They would have lost all the positive and the good, which would have come to the second half of their life. Kind of disconcerting, I understand this. Concerning this, the Tana brings to such a person the scriptural proof one sinner can lose much good. In other words, even though that you've elevated yourself and you understand to elevate yourself to the concept of love of God, you still have to look at it as if you have to be careful. Because a person, you can sin, you could lose the whole building. The whole mountain can fall down. The whole house of cards. Okay? So you still have to be very diligent to make sure that you're going to tip the scales always to the side of merit. Now, the consciousness of all the rabbis and the masters was their idea was one more mitzvah. One more mitzvah. Where's the next mitzvah? Where's the next mitzvah? They're looking for the next mitzvah. Okay? Constantly. I remember hearing a story about this one rabbi. He has this Talmidim, one Hasidic Rebbe, very diligent in mitzvahs. He says, okay, we have to go make the matzahs, okay? So they go and they do the grinding of the matzahs. And he's got a whole crew of people, and they're involved in grinding the matzahs, and they knead the matzahs, and they make the matzahs. They bake all the matzahs for the entire community. And they're done, and they're schwitzing, they're wiping off the sweat from their head. And then the rabbi goes, okay, who's involved? Who's in charge of esrogim? You know, esrog is for sukkos, right? Pesach, Passover is matzah. 6 months later is the holiday of Sukkot, where you're worrying about esrogim. Where's the mind? Where's the rabbi's mind? Next mitzvah. Looking for the next mitzvah, because you have to watch out. Okay. So basically, if you have to look at it, even though you've reached such a high level of consciousness, you have to be diligent. Okay. Now, going on page 174. Now, okay, so just to go back here, we're understanding that the whole idea of this transformational principle is basically that a person half meritorious, half liable, he has to look at himself as, yes, a Benoni, but in terms of the past deeds of his life. And that the one mitzvah that he has to do to tip the scale is the mitzvah of love, okay? And never fall out of love. Now we are in a position to understand, wow, we're almost there. Now we are in a position to understand the addition that Rabbi Eliezer made to the Tana's words. We can also see why he doesn't use the language of half liable and half virtuous, as the Tana does. The Tana was talking within the framework of the second and third levels of love of God. This is very important. We said that there are 4 levels of love of God. The Tana, the original teacher who said you have to look at yourself as if you're half this, half that, he was only talking about what? Level 2 and 3. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, is talking from the perspective of the 4th level of love of God, which is called eternal love, and involves the insight that God is good and does only good to evildoers and good people alike, which is the revelation of God's face as it truly is. Again, the revelation, the Gilui Panim Emes of Nitzchias, of who God really, truly is, okay? Does God want to give good? The ultimate purpose of creation is God wants to bestow pleasure. And we have to become vehicles of that pleasure. We're going to stop here. I'm going to tell you just a little story in the end, okay? Because I have to tell you this unbelievable story. It's one of my favorites, okay? Because it has to do with the balance of merit, okay? Because we really don't know what balance is, okay? But the idea here is Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, is going to take us an understanding as this is what we're involved into the 4th level of consciousness, the 4th level of love of God, of this unconditional love of God. And every single thing that what he's talking about is going to propel us to that understanding. But up until now, we've understood that seeing your half and half, basically the bottom line, the take-home idea here is, until you are at that level of absolute love of God, even the level 3, right? Until then, you are called a Benoni, and we are in a process. And the goal to keep in mind is to get to love of God. V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. Okay? And if you didn't get there, you haven't reached the zenith of the mountain, and you're still considered a Benoni, and you're still in the process. And now I will finish with a great story. Okay? So the Baal Shem Tov, before he was revealed in the world, he would go from town to town and strike up conversations with people. And of course, they didn't have cell phones or entertainment then. The form of entertainment was to tell stories, and inspiring stories. And he would talk with some people, and then some people would gather around, and then some more people and more people. And then when there was a nice, sizable crowd, then he would let them have it, right? And of course, he would talk with the simple folk. And he was dressed up in peasant clothes, very much the same, but still his words were very inspiring and very deep. And so when he had enough of the people in the crowd of the town he was in, he told a story. He says, let me tell you a story about 2 people. One was named Moshe, and Moshe, he was a schlepper. Moshe, basically, he had a family, he had kids he had to take care of, but basically what he was doing was he was carrying baggages. That was his job all day long. He barely knew any Torah, wasn't able to learn. He was just schlepper. He was mamish schwitzing all day long, carrying packages. If it wasn't water, it was hay. If it wasn't hay, it was, wheat or food. So, in the same place where Moshe lived, there was this other man who was a scholar. He was learning all day long. He was supported by members of the community, and he was able to basically go be in synagogue, study the Torah, right? And basically what would be is this person who was involved in this kind of holy manner of service, where he was studying all day, pray at length, right? They would end up being walking home together. So what happened was Moshe, who he'd be studying, Moshe, he couldn't study. Moshe, he basically could never pray long and barely get the words out. He had to go run out and do something and work. But every night they would walk home together. And the scholar, he would look at him, what we call the sneer. What's a sneer? A sneer is kind of like a look, right? Can anybody give me a picture of a sneer on the camera? Maybe is that it, the sneer? I don't know if a sneer has any kind of verbal kind of sound. Okay? But he would sneer. Okay? Because why? I'm walking home. This guy's in the same direction. Moshe, he doesn't learn. There's nothing really that we can talk about. Right? And Moshe, on the other hand, he would walk, he would sigh. If I can only learn Torah, if I can only have time to spend davening. See, he would sigh and he would sneer. And years would go by, years and years and years would go by. Finally, the time came where they left this world. And what happened was, here, they brought the scholar here, who comes to the holy tribunal, the heavenly court, and they weigh on, they have, because we're talking scales today, right? So they weigh on the scales all of his Talmudic learning and all of the holy books that he's gone through, and it weighs so big, and all of the deeds that he's done of matzah and etrog and the mitzvahs and the davening. Unbelievable, they say. And they're just about to conclude his case, going, Gan Eden for you, man. You did such a great job. And then all of a sudden, there's one angel goes, whoa! And the angel flies in, and he takes that little sneer, and he puts it on the balance of liability, of chov. And he puts that little sneer there, and all of a sudden, everything just goes like that. Okay? Bummer. Excuse me. Right? The one sneer outweighed everything. Such a message there for some people. And then, of course, Moshe comes in and he's a schlepper. And his deeds, what mitzvahs, his davening, not looking good. Weak. Right? Not so good there, Moshe. But then all of a sudden the angel flies in and he says, I have the sigh. I have the sigh here, and he puts the sigh on the scale of merit, right? And it outweighs every single thing else. Okay, there's a lot to really integrate in that one story. Okay, what a sigh can do. In other words, a yearning, like I spoke about the past few weeks, seeking, yearning to connect to God, yearning to connect to infinity, has a lot of weight, as opposed to a person who just has book knowledge. And he might go through all of the motions. But if God forbid, he looks down on anybody, okay? Even to the point where it's a sneer. How much would that outweigh all of that good deeds? One sinner loses a lot, okay? So the idea here is, how do we weigh it out, our good deeds and bad deeds, okay? The idea here is, now go to your week with this new level of understanding ourselves, and with the understanding deeply integrated into our psyche, one good deed can weigh out the entire scale, okay? One yearning, a sigh of wanting to draw closer, even that. Even though you're not absolutely loving God at that one moment, you want to get there. And if you want to get there, or maybe you want to get there, or maybe you want to get there, you can do it 10 times. 10 times. Okay? We should go to our week loving and only loving the world, and hopefully, God willing, we'll elevate the entire world. And next week, we'll talk about how that actually is going to elevate the entire world. Okay, we'll stop here. Any questions, anybody?